This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, it's Jeff Cutter. I'm welcoming you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, August 27th, 1992, one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle for the Toronto Blue Jays' 1992 drive for the World Series was put into place. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, hang on a tick. Isn't there a trade deadline on July 31st? Well, back in the old days, even a few years ago, you were allowed to trade players in August. However, you would have to put them on waivers, in a sense. And if they pass through waivers, then they get traded to another team and all that. So basically, yeah, there have been a lot of weird August trades and all that in history. But obviously, it's a little bit of bias for why I'm doing this, because obviously, as a Toronto Blue Jays fan, you gotta do what you gotta freaking do. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell. So anyway, David Cone was a very smart pitcher. He was pretty good. He was actually picked in the third round of the 1981 draft by the Kansas City Royals. Okay, fair enough. And then all of a sudden, he pitches for Kansas City. He doesn't really do too much for Kansas City. And Kansas City was stacked. I mean, Brett Saberhagen, Marcus Hipa, guess Danny Jackson at the time. I can't remember. But anyway, David Cone couldn't get in. And so the Royals decided they didn't need Cone because of all those people. So they decided to trade him with Chris Jellick to the Mets for Ed Hearn, Rick Anderson, and Mario Gozzo. So anyway, Kansas City thought that Ed Hearn would be a good catcher for them and a good hitting catcher. Basically, make people forget about Jim Sundberg. But Ed Hearn was not that good as a player. No siree bump. Well, David Cone was on a star-studded pitching staff, himself with the Mets. Dwight Gooden, Bob Ojeda, Sid Fernandez. I can't remember anyone else. But anyway, the trade would bite Kansas City in the butt, especially in 1988 when David Cone went 20-3 in that year and basically just rung everyone up. Cone had a feeling that in 1988 he was going to do well with the Mets because many National League teams didn't really see him in action in the 87 season, so he figured he might as well just pitch his heart out, and he did. He won the Cy Young that year. The Mets should have went to the World Series that year, but LA just had the heart of a lion, 7-game series. So anyway, he was a decent pitcher for the Mets. And then came the massive trade. He was traded from the Mets to the Blue Jays in exchange for Jeff Kent and a player to be named later. That was Ryan Thompson. So the Mets figured they wanted David Cone to win a World Series ring. He didn't the Mets because he didn't join the Mets until 87. That was after their championship. So what they did was they basically decided, well, we need someone good. And the Blue Jays had Jeff Kent, who was waiting in the wings for Roberto Alomar and possibly Dick Schofield or Manny Lee to croak in a sense. So the Blue Jays decided to get rid of Jeff Kent to the Mets. Little did we know that Jeff Kent was going to be a very star-studded player for the Mets. Then the Giants, especially winning the 2000 NL MVP. But I mean, what can you do? I mean, Kent was stuck at second base, with second base occupied by Roberto Alomar. So what ends up happening is that David Cone comes in for the Blue Jays. They needed a starter and all that. Dave Steve got hurt in the 92 season, so he couldn't really do anything. Blue Jays had some great talents. They had Jack Morris, who they picked up from the Twins in free agency. They had Juan Guzman. They had Jimmy Key. That's right. And they had Todd Stoudemire in the starting rotation. So they really needed a power pitcher. And they got David Cone. Unfortunately, Cone's first start as a Blue Jay was memorable for all the wrong reasons, as he gave up a lot of runs as the Blue Jays got crushed by the Milwaukee Brewers 22-2. In fact, the Brewers put up 31 hits, the most of an American League team in history. So, yeah, David Cohn's career didn't really start off that well. So, anyway, in Toronto. So, anyway, he still played well. He wasn't really that good in the postseason with winning games. I think he won a game, but anyway, David Cohn put up a pair of hits in Game 2 of the World Series, which actually made him the first AL pitcher in 20-plus years to do that. Because, you have to hit in National League ballparks, and Cohn, playing the National League, knew about hitting off National League pitchers. Cohn helped the Jays win in 6 games. But he was a free agent at the end of the year, and Kansas City snatched him up. Toronto wanted David Cohn. And David Cohn didn't want to play for the Royals, allegedly, even after winning the 94 Cy Young. So the Blue Jays decided to get him to Kansas City in exchange for Chris Steins and a pair of minor leaguers. Steins would do better for the Reds. But after a few months, the Blue Jays wanted him to trade him to a contender, so they decided to trade him to the Yankees for 3 nobodies. The Yankee, he went through free agency a couple of times before the Yankees re-signed him. So, yeah, Cohn was supposed to be part of the team in '95 to help the Yankees get through the playoffs. And David Cohn pitched pretty well, but there's always the argument that Cohn pitched too long in Game 5 of the '95 LDS against the Mariners. I would agree with them that Buck Showalter screwed up and left Cohn in longer than he should have. Because Mario Rivera was on that team as a middle reliever. John Wetland was the closer, but I think he had to save his bullpen. That would cost dearly, as the Yankees would lose the game to the Mariners, and Buck Showalter lost his job, and Joe Torre came over. David Cohn's Yankees' iconic moment was, of course, July 18, 1999, when he pitched a perfect game against the Montreal Expos on Yogi Berra Day, because Yogi Berra finally decided to come back to the Yankees organization, in a sense. He never visited Yankee Stadium after he got fired as manager in '85. So for 13 years, he stayed away. But he was allowed to throw out the first pitch of the ball game. And it worked. David Cohn, who actually went to Doug Larson's high school, believe it or not, actually threw a perfect game against the Expos. Ironically, I was at a game that day. Not that game. I was at the Blue Jays game at the Sky Dome against the Braves when the Jays narrowly beat the Braves 2-1. That was fun. David Cohn would then be signed by Boston in free agency. And he signed a one-day contract with the Mets in 2003 to retire as a New York Met. So, yeah, the Blue Jays did well. David Cohn was going to be just a rental player. But, hey, David Cohn helped out, in a sense, with his bat and a few wins here and there. He was the piece the Blue Jays really needed to get over the hump and finally make the World Series and win the World Series at that. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adu.